In 1991, Vera Lengsfeld walked into a government building in Berlin and asked to read her own mail. Not the mail people had sent her. The mail people had sent about her. 6 million East Germans had files in this building. Hers ran to 40-some volumes. 80 different people had been assigned to watch her, listen to her, follow her, and write down what she said at dinner. She read carefully. She was a professional dissident. She had been arrested, tortured, and exiled by these people. She knew the genre. And then she got to the file of an informant codenamed Donald. Donald knew what she ate for breakfast. Donald knew what she said in her sleep. Donald knew which of her friends she trusted, which she didn't, and what positions she preferred. Donald, it turned out, was her husband. To understand the betrayal, you have to understand the fabric. So let's stitch some context. Vera Lengsfeld was born in 1952 in Hohenschönhausen, East Germany. Her father was an officer in the Stasi, the Ministry for State Security, which is the kind of detail you'd cut from a screenplay for being too on the nose. She was raised on the gospel of the German Democratic Republic, that after the Nazis, the East had built something fair, something just, something worth informing on your neighbors for. She believed it for a while. She studied philosophy at Humboldt University, joined the party in 1975, and got a respectable academic job at the Academy of Sciences. The system worked. The system had produced her. The system was, by any reasonable measure, going great. And then, like many philosophy graduates, she made the catastrophic mistake of thinking about it. By 1981, she was a born-again Christian, which in East Germany was less a religious statement than a real estate one. The Lutheran Church was the only space the state couldn't fully bug, so if you wanted to talk about peace, the environment, or, God forbid, free elections, you found Jesus first and the agenda second. She co-founded the Pankow Peace Circle. She helped run the Environment Library. She organized something called the Peace Workshop, which sounds adorable until you remember that in East Germany, the word peace was a felony if you used it without a permit. In 1981, Vera met a poet. His name was Knud Wollenberger. He was Danish-born, which in the GDR was a superpower. It meant he had a passport that worked. He came from a Jewish communist family. His father had narrowly escaped the death camps. He wrote poetry. He showed up at the church meetings. He was charming. He was committed. He was foreign, but not too foreign. He was, by every available metric, the perfect partner for a woman trying to dismantle a totalitarian state from inside a chapel basement. They married. They had 2 children. There is, of course, a small footnote to all of this. A footnote Vera would not read for another decade. Knud Wollenberger had been a Stasi informant since 1972. He started informing 9 years before they met. He had not been recruited to spy on her. He had simply been a spy. Marrying her was, depending on how you read his contract, either a remarkable coincidence or a really efficient career move. In 1984, 3 years into the marriage, Knud Wollenberger signed a fresh contract with the Ministry for State Security. The contract had a name on it, Vera's and her son's, from a previous marriage who was a teenager at the time. He was assigned the codename Donald, probably after the duck. The Stasi were not, historically, a creative shop. From that point forward, every dinner table conversation was a report. Every phone call she made from her own apartment was a memo. Every friend who came over got a paragraph. The arguments, the reconciliations, the pillow talk, the sex, the Stasi were extraordinary record keepers. We know what Vera said in 1985 because Donald wrote it down in 1985 and a clerk filed it under V. Meanwhile, Vera was getting bolder. In 1988, she took part in a public demonstration during an official communist parade, the Luxembourg Liebknecht March. holding a banner quoting Rosa Luxemburg back at the regime. The line was, "Freedom is always the freedom of the one who thinks differently." She was arrested on the spot. She was taken to Hohenschönhausen, the Stasi's central interrogation prison in Berlin. She spent a month in a cell there. She was interrogated. The interrogators knew, somehow, an awful lot about her. What she'd said at home, who she'd called, what she was planning. Years later, she would give tours of that exact cell to school children in stilettos. We'll get there. In 1988, she was offered a deal, prison or exile. She picked exile. She went to Cambridge. She studied philosophy because she had not yet learned her lesson about philosophy. And then, on November 9th, 1989, the day the Berlin Wall fell, she happened to be back in East Berlin, trying to sort out her teenage son's school paperwork. She crossed Bornholmer Strasse with the first wave. The country that had jailed her was, in real time, ceasing to exist. Knud was there too. They went home together. They were, by every appearance, a dissident family that had won. 2 years passed. Germany reunified. Vera was elected to parliament for the Greens. She helped write the law that opened the Stasi files to their victims. She was, in every way, the architect of her own discovery. In 1991, she went to read her file. 40-something volumes, 80 handlers. She started reading the way she read everything, methodically, philosophically, like a woman who had spent her life believing that knowing was better than not knowing. She read about Donald. She noted the dates. The dates of Donald's reports lined up suspiciously precisely with dates she had been at home, with her husband, alone. Late one night, the phone rang. It was an old friend who edited a weekly paper called Die Andere. He told her, "Tomorrow morning, we are publishing the name of the informant, codenamed Donald. We wanted you to hear it from us first." She already knew. She had known on some level for hours, but knowing and being told are different rooms in the same house. She would later say, "One day we were a normal, intact family. The next, we were completely shattered. I just told him to leave." Vera divorced Knud in 1992. They didn't speak for years. She wanted to know why. She has said in interviews that she has spent 30 years trying to understand and has only ever gotten better at living with the fact that she doesn't. Knud's eventual explanation, when he gave one, was something like he came from a family that had been destroyed by a totalitarian state, and he was afraid Vera's activism would destroy theirs. So, to protect his family, he reported every detail of his family's life to the secret police. If that logic doesn't quite track for you, congratulations. You are mentally healthier than the GDR. Here's the part that should bother you more than the marriage. There were roughly 100,000 Stasi officers. There were an estimated 500,000 informants. In a country of 16 million people. Do the math, that's 1 in 26. Your barber, your priest, your brother, your husband. And after reunification, almost none of them faced consequences. The legal compromise was that East Germans could not be prosecuted under West German law for things that had been legal under East German law. And informing on your wife was technically legal. It was, in fact, encouraged. There were forms. So the informants kept their pensions. Many kept their jobs. A few got elected to things. Knud Wollenberger lived with Parkinson's disease for the rest of his life. He eventually wrote Vera a letter asking for forgiveness. She gave it. She has been clear repeatedly that forgiveness is not the same as understanding, and neither is the same as justice. He died in 2012. He never gave an interview about Donald. Today, if you visit the Berlin Hohenschönhausen Memorial, the former Stasi prison, you might get lucky on the tour. Your guide might be a small, elegant woman in her 70s. She'll show you the interrogation rooms. She'll show you the rubber-padded cells. She'll point at one specific door and say, with no particular emotion, this was the room where they did the water torture that made you think you were drowning. The next one was for the Chinese water torture. She'll say it the way you'd describe the layout of an Airbnb, and then she'll show you her cell. She has been asked many times whether giving these tours is painful, whether reliving it daily is a form of self-harm. She always answers the same way. Vera Lengsfeld was betrayed by her father's institution, by her husband, and, in a smaller way, by her country's polite refusal to prosecute any of it. She has spent the rest of her life converting the betrayal into a curriculum. That's the scar, not the wound. The thing the wound becomes when you refuse to let it close quietly. Next time on Stitched Snitches, make sure to drop your thought in the comments, subscribe, and like this video as you await a new story coming up next time.